Are parental rights protections just extra garbage? Believe it or not, that's how one left-wing lawmaker in the General Assembly framed it when Governor Youngkin tried to insert more protections for parents into a bill. We're going to tell you all about that and a showdown developing in the state capitol. Plus, don't miss our recap of the Virginia March for Life, including Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears' speech and some fun pics and videos. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome everyone. Glad you could join us for another episode of Speak Up Virginia. Before we get started, I do want to remind you, if you want other people to know all about these life and family issues going on in Virginia, make sure you share our Speak Up Virginia playlist on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or audio platforms like that, just take a moment to give us a good review. That helps us get the word out to more people. You can just give us that quick 5-star review. Thank you so much for doing that. And now let's dive right in. All right, we promised people last time we were going to give them an update on the outcomes of Veto Day. So as we get into that, help us understand what happened on Veto Day. You know, what's that all about and why is it important?
Yeah, so just a quick refresher. The bills get passed, by the House and the Senate. They go to the governor's desk. He has choices. He can sign them. They become law. They're out of the picture. Or he can amend them, make changes he suggests, or he can veto them. And so once he's done that, we have a one-day session, which we just had, where the House and the Senate deal with what the governor has done to the bill. So they can accept his changes, or they can try to override his vetoes. And so, we're such narrow margins in Virginia. Mm-hmm. It's never going to be the case under this scenario where they override anything. So on the good news front, we didn't have any of the big vetoes. If you remember, he vetoed marijuana. He vetoed, the FACE Act, which was the pro-life, criminalizing pro-lifers outside of a pregnancy center. So the big stuff, thankfully, we knew there weren't going to be fireworks, and there weren't. So that was good.
So the real battle then is shaping up over the amendments, right?
Yes, and really, actually, what's interesting about it is I think veto session, that one day, more than even the rest of the legislature, you really see the party politics. You see the gamesmanship. So it is about the substance of the amendments. It's also about just both sides defining themselves. And we saw this year a very interesting effort by the Democrats to frame all things that were attempted by the Republicans as tied to the president, because they think that is unpopular in Virginia. And so they, I don't know if have you ever seen those?
Yes, we got to show that. Now, I do just want to point out real quick on these amendments, the governor was trying to change some outlandish bills coming from Democrats. So, we're going to talk about that.
We'll get into all the...
But first, to your point, all this political gamemanship, we've got this... This is an amazing video, really. We know the politics are going to happen, but the amount of scripting...
Correct.
...to try to politicize is just really jaw-dropping, and Nick Freitas really called them out on this, and so we just have to share this with you.
Republicans are too terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump. Too terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
We're too terrified of Trump. In fact, we've heard every single speech. I can just imagine all the Democrat caucus, right, in the meeting beforehand going, what would be a totally sick burn is if we just said this in every single little speech we gave, and then they dutifully walked up here and did it in every single speech. I wish we could just stream it all together. Maybe we'll do that. Anyways.
Too terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
Too terrified of Trump.
Too terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
Here we go again.
Terrified of Trump.
Afraid of Trump.
Terrified of Donald Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
It's funny when we're so afraid of Trump that we won't vote a certain way, but the bill passed 84-11. That's all.
Terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
Terrified of Trump.
The only people in this room terrified of something are apparently our Democrat colleagues of our own law-abiding citizens.
So apparently the phrase was that the Republicans were too terrified of Trump to actually do the things the Democrats wanted them to do, which I don't think they're terrified of Trump. I think they're actually pretty happy they have a guy in office that has a pretty similar philosophy, but they thought that would be the big buzzword and they could get the media to carry it. It's actually embarrassing when it's carried so deeply in every speech that you get outed on it. Like that becomes almost trivial. And I liked it. Some other people posted the same type of thing, and they said, I guess they ran out of other words to say. Like they had not, like I guess they just didn't have any real arguments, and this is all they got.
Yeah. I mean, when it's at that level, you've got to know there was actually most likely
passed around. I mean, literally, they went into caucus, and they must have everybody say this. And I mean, there's a time you're trying to reinforce certain trends, but they took it so far that they're now kind of the laughing stock. So anyway, that was entertaining.
And I liked what Freda said about what they're really afraid of is actually implementing what parents want. And that gets me into my next topic, which is Sage's Law. I know a lot of our listeners, this is what they are concerned about, is this ability to weigh in as parents when schools are promoting changing your gender to kids. And are you going to be notified about that if your kid starts experimenting with that because other friends are doing it, or you're getting counseling, the kid is getting counseling from a school counselor? Is the parent going to get just minimal notification of all the stuff that can alter their child's life if they get put on this conveyor belt? And so tell us kind of the crazy stuff going on surrounding Sage's Law. I know we talked about it a little bit about it last time, but I want our people to know the latest.
Yeah, just the quick update on the literal what happened to the bill. As you remember, this was an amendment. So we had an original bill, it didn't get heard. Then the governor amended another bill that was exactly about parental notification. It was a bill about notifying parents on other issues. And so this fit perfectly. So the governor said, well, if we're going to have a bill that tells parents they need to know these things, let's notify them also about gender change and that kind of confusion in school with their child. And so that bill moved forward with the amendments, and the Senate passed it by for the amendments by for the day, so they didn't even hear it. And the House, the Speaker has an option. He is supposed to look at amendments and say whether they are germane or not. That is the technical term for, did you actually add something in the bill that is consistent with the flavor of the bill? It's supposed to be in the same code section. It's supposed to be on the same topic, basically. And this is important because we don't want any bill tagged with any idea, right? So that's why we have germaneness. But it is absolutely not supposed to be used simply to block a bill you don't want to vote on. Mm-hmm. So what the Speaker did is he said, this is not germane, and decided to completely just not even let them vote on the amendments.
That is just so blatant, just as a tactic. But this just kills me. You have this bill, I just have to say this, you've got this bill that is essentially acting like the nanny state to parents. You need to say these things about gun storage
and prescription drugs.
But what he's trying to say is not relevant, is something that actually impacts your kid's life, that you actually should be involved in with these gender identity issues. That's not relevant to parental notification. I think that's just incredible.
Well, and I think we should circle back to a little bit more about what happened with the Sages bill, but I'll mention one other bill where germaneness came in, where there was a bill that basically was an interesting effort. It's maybe not as great an effort as we had hoped, but there was a bill that's trying to get at the social media issue with our kids. And I'll just mention what it was. It was basically that there's going to be a default 1 hour limit on a kid, and the bill was under 16 getting on a social media app. Okay, so that was the concept, and if a parent wants to change it, they can. So it's kind of like not exactly parental consent in the sense of the parent should set the default no matter what it is. I mean, there shouldn't be a government default. It should be the parent saying, I'm going to proactively go in, and it ought always. But it's a step in the right direction. Well, the governor rightly noted that there really shouldn't be a difference between 16-year-olds and, we'll say, 17-year-olds, because the law is supposed to treat children under 18 the same. They either are a child or they're not. And it's really bad when we start saying, like, oh, somehow they're actually adults at 16. So all he did was amend the age to 18. And they that if you're under 18 instead of under 16, this law would take effect. And they called that not germane. I've never seen something more on point than simply addressing a tweak in the age, and somehow that was so. This speaker was playing games because he didn't want certain things. It had nothing to do with the technicalities. Anyway, we can go back to Sage's Law, but I just wanted to make that point of the illustration of how this is being misused. This procedural effort is being misused by the speaker.
I think a lesson learned out of this session is that the left does not care about parental rights, and they even want to block it. And so to that point, tell us about some of these outlandish statements being made
Around
about the
Sage's-
governor's amendment, trying to put Sage's law, these protections for parents on the gender identity issues, back into the law.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So there were two bills, a Senate bill and a House bill. And on the House version, the patron was Delegate Cohen of Fairfax. And basically, a reporter went to her. So there's this article.
radio
this
interview.
radio interview. And she basically says, maybe we should play it first. You wanna-
Yeah,
you wanna
let's
play it? Let's just go ahead and play it.
play this. Let you hear
This
it
is
for
her
yourself.
reaction to the amendment to her bill.
Delegate Laura Jane Cohen didn't think her idea was that controversial.
If you have minor children in your home, you have to safely and securely store your firearms.
Her bill asked schools to inform parents of that law and the importance of safely storing dangerous medications.
The kid safe lids are not surprisingly not particularly kid safe.
The bill passed with some bipartisan support, and Cohen thought Governor Glenn Youngkin would get behind it in line with his promise to involve parents more in schooling.
We felt very positive as it went off to his desk, and then it came back with some extra garbage.
She's referring to an additional requirement to notify parents if a student asks for, quote, social affirmation of the minor student's gender incongruence. Parental notification of such students isn't new. In 2023, conservative lawmakers patroned a similar effort called Sage's Law, which narrowly passed the then GOP-controlled House but was killed in the Senate. Victoria Cobb is with the conservative group the Family Foundation of Virginia. They've long supported parental notification when a student is questioning their gender identity.
Parents only want what's best for their children, and when a child has gender confusion, a parent should be their best ally.
But Cohen thinks the added language to her bill isn't incidental. Her child is transgender. And she pointed to a survey of LGBTQ students in her Fairfax County district who consider suicide at higher rates.
He thinks it's funny to bully people, and I don't know about you, but I don't see a lot of people laughing.
Youngkin's amendments to Cohen's bill will be considered next week during a reconvened session. In Richmond, I'm Brad Kuttner.
Okay, wow. Unless our ears deceive us, I think we all just heard her call parental rights extra garbage.
Yes, correct. But she also went further to say, I mean, not only that, and I want to remind everybody who was in the last set of elections, if you remember, there was a senator caught on a hot mic saying basically the same thing, and that did not help his Senate election.
What is their deal with calling parental rights garbage? Why do they keep using the garbage term?
It's a great question.
I mean, it's almost like a Freudian slip that this is how they view.
Oh, I think they do. I think they really do. I think they think kids are capable of living life without their parents. I can't comprehend it. But also, I was kind of amused by her saying this is like people playing around with and being a bully. And I'm sitting here thinking, she mentions the suicide. Okay, we're talking about Sage's Law. I just want to remind people what the genesis of this bill is. Nobody's playing around. This child was drawn into sex trafficking, and they're making it sound like there's no reason to have parents involved, like we're playing some kind of game. And they're just, I don't know if they just have to ignore the entire story. I think it's just amazing to me that they bring up something else and act like we don't have a legitimate reason for bringing these issues forward.
Yeah, you do see them not covering, and the media also Sage's story.
Yeah, they let them get away with it.
Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the only ridiculousness that we were seeing through this whole veto day, the way things were being handled. And, we're being kind of humorous about it, but these really are serious topics. But another area where they were just trying to insert this politicized agenda that really isn't helping people is this whole issue around the term birthing people. Please tell us what's going on with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like we're repeating last year because they did this last year and they did it again this year where there were bills about pregnancy and they felt the need. It's about pregnancy. Like, no mistaking who we're talking about here, but they feel the need to say birthing people instead of talking about women. And so just like last year, the governor went in and amended these to make it clear that the people that give birth are mothers or they're women or whatever. They're not birthing people. And so, again, we see this playing out very, very similarly because they, again, rejected his amendments. Last year, that cost them a bill. So last year, he then said, forget it. I'm not signing your bill if you're putting this ridiculous language in it. I don't know what he'll do. The bill's contents are each bill is different.
They know what they're doing here because they insert these words. Basically, they are erasing women law by law by doing this. They are taking out women and replacing it with birthing people, that kind of thing. And they put it in these bills that are hard for a governor to veto because it's all about maternal health Medicaid, that kind of thing. They're using things that are supposed to help people as a tool to erase women.
Yeah, some of the underlying bills, just like last year, do okay things that the governor might want to accomplish, but he doesn't want to be part of their effort to rewrite actual reality into our code. I find it so interesting because the feminist movement was all about women this, women that, and when the ERA
now
was
we can't say women.
Well, that's the thing. When the ERA was being passed, it was like women don't have equal rights because they're not specifically written in there.
Yeah.
Now they're specifically pulling women out of the code, and it's supposed to be fine with everybody. It's such a bizarre world that they live in.
What about the leftist line you always hear that we need to have every person reflected in the words? Like you have to see yourself in the words. I'm not seeing ourselves here.
We're not. They are intentionally pulling us right on out. But yet they want to focus on all these issues they consider women's rights, right? So they spend all their time on contraception and all the things, and they shout women's rights. So maybe we should talk about that bill as well. So
yeah, I think we had talked about with Todd last week these sweeping bills they were putting forward under the label so-called right to contraceptive, legislation, so-called right to contraception. But hidden within that is just this sweeping language that covers drugs causing abortion and undermining parental rights and religious freedoms because you're dealing with insurance companies. And are you going to have another situation like Little Sisters of the Poor where you're forcing organizations to cover something that goes against their conscience? And so there's all kinds of issues with that on many levels that we had a problem with this. And so the governor amended that. So tell us a little bit about his amendment and how this is kind of turning into a showdown now.
Yeah, again, this is kind of the same play from last year. They put forward the same kind of bills, and he puts forward the same kind of amendment. And the amendment is simply this. Guess what? The Supreme Court has already addressed contraception. There is a right to contraception. So the governor simply puts that in to say, this is the actual right to contraception, the basic right to contraception without all the abortifacients and all that. That is covered by the Supreme Court. And so then they of course don't accept his amendment. So now the bill will be back at his desk, and he will have to decide, am I vetoing it or letting it go into law?
So I just want to kind of make it really kindergarten level for those of us that don't live in your world.
Yeah.
He's basically saying there's no need for this.
There's no need, and you're putting extra things around this right because, again,
it's already covered.
Yes, and they're trying to get to things like a 16-year-old has the right without parental consent.
Yeah.
And he's going, come on, we've got the fundamental right is there. What you're trying to get to is a little extra, and we're not going to.
So you're addressing something that's unnecessary, trying to politicize it more, and then also
trying to sneak in this kind of these. It's a right for every individual, not an adult,
with none of the protections, the religious freedoms issues.
Yes, none of the conscience rights that have also clearly been outlined through various Supreme Court decisions.
So it's kind of like Groundhog Day, as you were starting to explain.
It kind of feels like it. I mean, some of these exact plays were run last year, and the veto session went very, very similarly. So we are hoping, again, this year that he will veto this bill, that he, again, will say, I'm not accepting your original version of this.
All right, what can people do about that? Because that's something
they should contact the governor. That's a really important thing. On our website, familyfoundation.org, there is the governor's actions. It's like a banner across the top. Click on that, and that will give you a place where you can simply ask Governor Youngkin to do exactly what he did last year and just straight up veto these bills. There is no need for these things to be moved forward.
Yeah. All right, let's get to one more on here that I think is interesting. And this whole kind of inserting DEI into medical licenses, apparently.
Yeah, they have a bill that they put forward by Senator Locke, and then there was a House corollary that basically requires workers to complete unconscious bias training and cultural competency training. So these terms are
what does that mean?
So cultural competency training is, again, a left-wing buzzword, and they're trying to get at something. There is some concern around data saying, is there disproportionate care in any way around minorities, right?
Okay.
So that's important. We need to know if that's happening. We need to figure out how to address that if that is happening. And what the governor's basically saying is, look, I don't like your programs. And when you say cultural competency, I know what you mean.
It turns into DEI.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what he did is he basically said, instead, we actually just want to make sure that we are focusing on populations that data indicates experience significantly greater than average maternal mortality. So it could be the data might say this is the Black community. The data might say this is Hispanic community. We don't know, but he's saying, like, let's follow the science and let's focus on any community that fits that. And I don't want to throw in this term that triggers this specific sort of left-wing training for our healthcare workers. We want to actually know what is the best way to improve the situation. Follow that.
Well, especially when it's required to renew your medical license.
Correct.
Like it needs to not be a politicized version. It needs to actually help people.
And you just know what's happening everywhere. Any place that you put these kind of trainings in, the trainings get brought in by left-wing DEI
who's doing
specialists, consultants. Do we need to talk about UVA's amount of money they spend on it and all the Fairfax School and how much they, whenever you use the word training with anything that is associated with race, we get messiness. And it ends up that we're actually training everything that connects with critical race theory and all the other things. And so he's just like, we're not going to be part of that. But if there's a real problem, let's get to it.
So I think the governor's done something really smart here. He's actually taken this opportunity to say, let's look at data, as you say, across all these populations, women that are dying when they shouldn't.
Yes.
From birth or postpartum complications. Like, which populations is this happening in without preconceived ideas? And let's look at this in a way that actually helps people.
That's exactly right. And I think it's just so important that we get past the terminology and we get to data and we get to better outcomes. And that's what he's trying to say. And I think that was, again, he's just not going to stand for it. And I think we've got a president that's not standing for it. So this is sort of
it's amazing to watch.
An aligned philosophy. And it is such an improvement after, when this stuff first came out, it just felt like it was coming from every direction, being inserted into every field.
You felt like there was too much that you almost couldn't fight it.
Yes, and there were people who should have been fighting it that weren't. And now it's finally, I guess, come back into vogue to say, no, we actually want everyone treated equally with equal respect, and we don't have to put one person down to do that with someone else, and all those things. So anyway, I'm glad we're starting to turn a corner.
All right, so we're talking about a lot of this stuff that has happened, but people might be wondering, what can I do with this at a personal level? And we talked about how if you go to the website, familyfoundation.org, look for that governor's action page, you can encourage him to veto, especially the so-called right to contraception stuff that deals with abortion. But just moving past that, and we should mention that he has 30 days after veto session.
And he can sign at any point, so your action should be soon, right? So, he has 30 days, but if we don't tell him how much we want him to veto this. I mean, he could do it at any moment. He could sign the bill into law. So really, I encourage people to be quick about connecting with the governor.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, if people are thinking, well, what about all the rest of the stuff you talked about? What do we do with this? Tell us about the report card that will eventually, and how that kind of gives hope for there being some accountability for all this craziness.
Yeah, we are so excited. Every 2 years, we put out the Virginia General Assembly report card, and that is a document where anyone can look and they can see where their delegate or their senator has voted on all of these. We basically pick 20 of what we think are the most consequential or symbolic votes that show where a legislator stands on life and marriage and educational choice and birthing people, probably, and all those things. We do it every 2 years.
Please have a record on birthing people.
I would be shocked if birthing people does not end up in the report card, because you do want to know if your legislator is actually so out of touch with reality that that's the way they're voting. So
yes, can we just say they shouldn't maybe be governing if they do not know that men can't give birth?
Yeah, I think there should be, how like a base level IQ there should be something in there. So this report card will come out typically early May, and a lot of folks really like them for the primary process, because sometimes you're trying to decide, do I send my incumbent back or do I want somebody else? Or when you get to the general election, you're just trying to see where are they standing. And so it's, your legislator will get somewhere between a 0 and a 100 grade from the Family Foundation action, and that will tell them, this is either a pro-family guy or not so much. And there are legislators that used to brag about their zeros. So it's, depends where you want to land. But it's a big document. We're really excited when it comes out. And I think it's just a wonderful transparency tool.
And I will just brag on our team's work that I really think this is one of the only report cards like this that is coming from a pro-family perspective, pro-life perspective, and really is coming from the level of depth of knowledge and expertise that our teams bring. So yeah,
Look
just
forward
wanna
to that.
Look forward
we
to that.
will announce, when it comes out. You'll be able to get it on our website and Family Foundation Actions website also, because of course it's an action product. But
All right, we have to get to the fun part because something else was happening on Veto Day that we just want to do a little fun review of.
yes, it was March for Life Day, and we were thrilled. It was the 7th annual march. Thousands of folks. I guess the official count was 3,500. We never know how accurate that is. It always feels like a lot more people than the actual count, but it was amazing. And you see everything from little babies to the older folks that still want to march. And
there were a lot of young people.
Yes,
lots of bands, schools with bands. It was fun.
Yeah, Liberty University actually carried the front banner, so that was fun. A lot of college kids right up front, and it was the 4th year in a row that Governor Youngkin came out and marched with the crowd.
I think that is wonderful.
People love that, and truly, we can't take that for granted. That does not happen in most states.
No.
And in fact, it has not happened in any other state.
Yeah.
All 4 years of his term, he has come out, and actually most governors, even pro-life ones, haven't actually marched with the march. So it's
Let's
exciting.
just play a little video of the governor marching with everybody.
Good pace, guys, good pace. Right wing, half step, right. Send them.
I think another great thing about this march is that our Speak Up teams were there in such force.
Yay.
So it was really exciting. We had buses that came from all of our Speak Up areas, and they had their own banners, Speak Up for Life, from whatever area they were.
County,
Each
we had
area.
10 buses. It was awesome.
It was great, and I think they enjoyed being together. Just fun stories from taking the bus back and forth, all the things. So I think that was really great too.
One thing I'll mention, Victoria, that was just fun is this time each team had a megaphone.
Oh, okay. So that's why we heard more bullhorn.
They had chanting.
That's great.
So because they're Speak Up, it goes with the theme.
Right.
They're Speak Up teams.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't have bullhorns for them already. That probably needs to be par for the course. You start a Speak Up team, get a bullhorn.
It should go with it. It should be part of your team membership.
Thanks for signing up. Here's your
sign
ready
bullhorn.
To go. Yeah. Now maybe don't use it like in the school board meeting itself. It's like an outside activity kind of.
No, we'll save that kind of behavior for the left. But
yeah, you're right.
It really was so wonderful just to see the joy of them speaking up to represent God's unconditional love for life. And there was a joy that came with that. So I just wanted to share one more little clip that I actually took from my cell phone. So there was one moment when people were marching by, and I just liked it because it was the youth and their marching band, and they were just having so much fun. And then there was a Speak Up team. I think it was Newport News using their megaphones. So we're just going to play that real quick.
Is a gift. Speak up for life. Every life is a gift. Speak up for life. Every life is a gift. Speak up for life. Every life is a gift. Speak up for life.
I think we also, in addition to how great the march was, just need to talk about the rally portion too, because there's just important messages that come across at that rally. Obviously, we had people to share stories. So Shantae Mallory was this wonderful woman who shared her very personal story with her beautiful girls behind her.
That was so beautiful.
This little army of little young women, and she just talked about. Sounds like she started in just unbelievable circumstances, homeless, came out of parents who had addiction, and overcame that and chose life in the middle of those circumstances, because the left always says, what about these children that are going to be born into some bad circumstance, and as if it can't be helped with the support of a community, and she proves
and that they can't have a worthy life,
goodness.
A life that is valued, and she was just living proof up there with her children.
It was great, and then I think we shared some messages. One of the things I shared was just about the the unlimited abortion constitutional amendment, where we're going to have to not just march, we're going to have to act. And in specifics, I mentioned that the House election this year is going to be our chance to elect a pro-life majority. And so that's the only way we're going to stop that amendment before it gets all the way to the ballot. And so some of this was about kind of helping people know what's the next step after today.
Yeah, big part, yeah.
What happens next?
Rally all those people there. It was important the legislators saw them while they were there for Veto Day. And we're hoping all of those thousands of people will then journey with us to stop this unlimited abortion amendment. We know, of course, another really awesome moment, highlight at the rally, was our keynote speaker, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears.
Yeah, she's always a crowd favorite, and I think it's because they know she means it. It comes from her heart. It's always so passionate, and yeah, she was amazing.
And I love, again, she always brings scripture into it, very convictional. She hit it on why we need to stop this abortion amendment, unlimited abortion being enshrined into the Constitution. And so let's just head out today by letting people listen in on Lieutenant Governor Sears' awesome rally speech. So thank you for joining us today. We're going to let you be inspired by her words, but remember, we are stronger when we speak together, and anything you can do to share this podcast and get the word out more is awesome. We'll see you next time.
We stand for life, and how can it ever be wrong to stand for life? How can it ever be wrong? How can it ever be controversial? And yet there are those who point their fingers at all of us and accuse us of standing for righteousness. And before anybody says anything, we are not against women who have had abortion. No, we want to say to them, we welcome you. We welcome you. And we want you to know we're not trying to guilt you. What we're saying is your child is waiting for you in heaven. Your baby is with God. Ladies and gentlemen, if we want to see different, then we've got to be able to stand for righteousness. When I and my fellow senators this year, when we saw the bills coming through, and when we were trying to put guardrails around it, they killed every one of the amendments. And the amendment simply said, if the baby is born alive after an abortion, then the baby is now a patient. The baby is now a patient and deserving of health care. And they voted it down. They voted it down. And tears came to my eyes when I put the vote, and they voted against it. And I said to myself, how can this ever be right? But of course it's not. We must always do right. It's always right to do right. Don't let anyone bully you and shut you up, because they're not shutting up and we are not either, because we stand on the foundation of right. We're not going to give up, are we? No. We're not going to quit, are we? No. Because somebody has to fight for the unborn. And so I am so glad to be with you. And yes, they will speak against us, but we stand for life. Let's say it. We stand for life. We stand for life. And if life in the womb is not sacred, then no lives matter. No lives matter. Because before you know it, you can forget about being on the slippery slope. We will be down the mountain and wonder, how did we get here? And so that's why, again, we stand for life. We stand for life. We stand for life. Thank you all, and God bless you.